Hey! Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing The Flash, the dastardly death of the Rogue. Try to say that 3 times fast, it's quite a tongue twister. Take a look at this cover cover right here. Now Flash, the dastardly death of the Rogue, is the start to the new Flash comic. And although Barry Allen returned to us in Final Crisis, and even more so in Flash Rebirth, this is really the restart to him as the Flash and to the Flash comics themselves. Now see, there's a lot of questions that were hanging over people's heads of whether or not Barry Allen would be successful as the Flash once again. Because he was very successful when he was the Flash back in the Silver Age going into the Bronze Age. An incredibly successful character. However, since the Crisis on Infinite Earth, when he died, things have changed in comics. The whole atmosphere and scheme is a little bit darker, a little bit more gray area, and Barry Allen's character, for the most part, is still his Silver Age, Bronze Age version. He is a product of that era of comics. So the question remains is a character who's been out of comics for 20 plus years able to adapt to the new world he is in? Seeing that he's pretty much the same character. Or will the character change? Another question is, will Barry Allen be able to be as good in the modern era as Wally West? See, I love Wally West, I really do. Even though I like Barry a little bit more, I like how Wally West was the sidekick who actually stepped out of his mentor's shadow and became the Flash. And Wally West did it better than any other sidekick, better than Dick Grayson did it being Batman, or Donna Troy's short stint being Wonder Woman, or anything else for that matter. He was able to step out of the shadow of Barry Allen and become his own man, and actually make himself the Flash. When you think Flash, you thought Wally West. Although his comics had up and downs, the character was always successful. So what's the point of bringing Barry Allen back if we already have a Flash that works, that people like? Will Barry Allen be as good as Wally West? Will he be overshadowed by Wally West? Or will he blow Wally West away and regain his position as the greatest Flash of all? These are all questions that need to be answered, and they will be answered at the end of this review. And we will see whether or not the Flash keeps his momentum, keeps the speed that he had from Flash Rebirth going into this comic. Now, Flash, the Dastardly Death of the Rogue, is, on a whole, a simple story. The basic plot is that Barry Allen is trying to readjust to life as it is. I mean, he came out of witness protection. That's his cover for being dead. And he goes back to being a forensic officer for the police. But, well, the police force is not quite as it seems. It wasn't what it was like back in the day. They care more about getting cases closed rather than closing cases correctly. In addition to that, he needs to get back in the swings about being the Flash. And everything seems to be going good until someone shows up dead. See, an individual known as Mirror Monarch is killed, and it's found out that it's actually the Flash that kills him. Are you a little confused? Well, let me explain. The Mirror Monarch looks like Mirror Master, and he's from the 25th century, the future. And in the future, there's a group called the Renegades. Now, the Renegades are like the Rogue, Flash's enemies. There's Commander Cold instead of Captain Cold, the Top, the Trickster, the Mirror Monarch, and so on and so forth. However, instead of the Rogues, these Renegades are actually good guys. They're a force used to fight the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom. Now, Mirror Monarch goes back in time, collapses, and dies, and the Renegades say it's actually Barry Allen that kills him. Their explanation on why Barry Allen kills him is that there's this big, huge mirror that the Rogues have, and when this mirror is broken, a bunch of mirror forces, gods, come out and possess people, one of which is Barry Allen's wife. In desperation, the only way to get rid of the possession is to kill the person that broke the glass, and that was Mirror Master. And Barry Allen apparently mistook Mirror Monarch for Mirror Master and killed Mirror Monarch instead. It sounds a little confusing, but on the whole, it's actually a pretty simple story. Barry Allen is getting tried for a crime that he has yet to commit. And here's the real question. Does Barry Allen really commit this crime? Because, see, Barry Allen, as a character, and what I like about him, is that he will be willing to take someone's life. It's not something he wants to do, but as a police officer, he stands by the code that if an innocent life is in danger, he will take that action to prevent that innocent life from being killed, even if that means killing someone else. So the question is Barry Allen really have the mentality to go out, search for an enemy, to kill them in order to save his wife? These are big questions that do get answered in this book. But there's a very real danger to this, because this book leads in to Flashpoint. For the most part, it starts to build the story for Flashpoint. Now, a lot of people are asking, what's Flashpoint? Well, Flashpoint is going to be the next DC big event that focuses mostly around the Flash as his world is changing around him. And a lot of elements showcased in this set it up. Some of the characters, some of the story ideas, some of the enemies. You'll get to see that when you actually read the book. So let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. Well, let's start things off with art. The art is fantastic in this. It really is art made for the Flash. How the Flash moves and how the artist does how the Flash moves and uses his superpowers is really nicely done. It just feels as though this Flash is really akin to this art. This art is really for this Flash, really for this comic. It's beautiful, it's bright, and it gives off a very light tone to it. And the light tone is very accepted. It's very loved, and the art is really well for this book. Second thing is that Barry Allen shines in this book as a great character. He still does have that Silver Age personality to him. However, he is like a person lost in this new world. He's a Silver Age individual seeing things through a Silver Age eye. How the world has changed, he's trying to adapt to it, but he's not going to compromise who he is to adapt to this new world. Everyone has changed around him, but again, he's still adapting to it. And again, he's showing that he is the best Flash of all, at least in my opinion. He's a character that has been successfully transitioned over from one area to another, and it's done nicely. In addition to that, a lot of other characters here are showcased very nicely, particularly Captain Boomerang, who is a villain that I never really cared about beforehand, but actually, after reading this, in the backstory that is given for Captain Boomerang, I was impressed. The character has a very sympathetic backstory to him that you really kind of feel for him, but at the same time, you can't help but say, well, he's a bad guy. But you actually root for him with his motives and all the stuff that he wants to do. You're rooting for the bad guy as much as you're rooting for the good guy. And his backstory is kind of sad, too, at certain points. So, I like the fact that they actually showcase other characters and build them up. Particularly the two characters that I stated before, Barry Allen and Captain Boomerang, are the most developed in this book, but all of them are actually developed very nicely. I also like the fact that this is very much a superhero book, because Flash is very much superhero. He has outrageous story themes, outrageous villains, and outrageous plots, but they all work because that's what his comic is about. And the story itself may sound complicated when I explain it to you, but it's actually a very simple story, and it works very well for this comic. It has a lot of clues that need to be solved, and it has a lot of different twists and turns, but it's an enjoyable story. Really fun, and I really like what's done in this book. Bad. Well, there is a little bad to this. It depends on who's reading it. The biggest bad is that although you don't need to know much about the Flash going into this, you really don't. You kind of need to know what's going on in the DC Universe. Basically what's going on in Brightest Day. Now there's a few tie-ins to Brightest Day, and as you see right here, Brightest Day. Birds of Prey, Green Arrow, to name a few. And in those particular comics, they tie into Brightest Day quite a bit. Flash does not do it so much as, say, Green Arrow does, which ties into Brightest Day every other issue. or maybe Generation Lost, or so on and so forth. Flash does tie into it, but not quite as much. So while you'll see Captain Boomerang chasing Dove around, or creating these dark boomerangs, and you're like, well, why is this happening? Why is this going on? It's not really as bad as it seems. It is kind of a negative if you don't read Brightest Day, because I read Brightest Day, so I kind of have a feel of what's going on between the two comics. But it's not as bad as other comics have for their tie-ins for Brightest Day. Does that make sense? Basically what I'm saying is that although this is the tie-in to Brightest Day, and although it can confuse people, it's not quite as bad as some of the other comics out there. You might be thrown for a loop for a bit, but in the end, it's all good. But that's really the only bad in this, is that you need to know a little bit what's going on with the DC Universe, with Brightest Day, and what's going to be happening with Flashpoint, and Blackest Night, and so on and so forth. On a whole, whether or not you should get it. Well, something was always bothering me about how people were reviewing this comic and after I read it. See, the thing is going into this comic, I did something that usually I don't do. I got my hopes up. I had my expectations set at a very high, because everyone were talking fantastically about this comic, stating how beautiful it was and how amazing it was. And I got a different impression than I actually got from reading it. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a great book. It continues the momentum that The Flash had from Flash Rebirth. Beautiful art, great story, great characterization. On the whole, very good. However, I don't want people to go into this thinking that it's absolute nirvana, because that's what happened with me. After reading everyone's reviews and watching videos online, although this is a fantastic book, it's not the best thing that's come out of The Flash. If I really had to define a grade for this, I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. You know, it's good. It's not quite as good as everyone says it is, but it's really good. However, despite me saying that, I do highly recommend picking it up. This is really great if you want to get into The Flash. Even if you know nothing about The Flash, you don't even know what his powers are, which would be kind of sad. But the fact of the matter remains that this is a good jump-on point for Flash as a character and as a comic. You really don't need to know much about the character, his villains, or his world going into this. I do recommend picking up Rebirth beforehand, but you could even go without reading Rebirth and enjoy this. It's a great story, beautiful art, and just great characterization. And although it did not live up to my full expectations, it did fill in a lot of the criteria that I really wanted from this book. Like I said, it's a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's definitely a must-get. And for something that has so many issues, it's only $19.99 for a hardcover. It has like 7 issues plus a few one-shots. So it has a lot to it. Flash, The Dastardly Death of the Rogue. Again, try to say that 3 times fast. It's a great book. Pick it up. Just set your expectations at a medium level so you'll be happy and surprised with what you get. Okay? So, with that said, this is Andrew saying peace out for now.